everyone. Welcome to another series, Futurist episode of the Futurist Series. Today, finally, I say finally because I think if you notice a pattern between all of the other chats and this one is a little bit different, but I have Arlene Mulder here with us. So I'm going to go into the reasons why I'm so excited to have Arlene here, but Arlene, maybe you want to do a quick intro.
Great to chat to you. So as you mentioned, I'm Arlene Mulder. When people ask me what I do, I always find it difficult to answer. I think the short answer is I'm an entrepreneur who loves to solve difficult challenges. But yeah, I guess my career started as I studied business, mathematics, and informatics, worked in investment banking for 7 years, then decided I need to resign before my 30th birthday and start my own business. So my first business was We Think Code, a software engineering university that I can share a little bit more detail about. And currently busy with a couple of other ventures, but the latest one, quite exciting, is basically the African version of Audible, where we bring African stories to the world. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, awesome. And I think those 2 points already just like gives you an idea that you're very much entrenched in the tech space. Something else I wanted to mention, and something that I read, and maybe you can give me the whole blurb. Africa, Forbes, woman. What was it specifically for? Innovation. Can you give me the whole thing?
You know, as South Africans, we don't like to talk about our own accomplishments. It was in 2019. I was nominated and won the African Forbes Woman in Science and Technology Award. Extremely humbling award, and I guess it's not. I can attribute it to my whole team at We Think Code. It was for the work we did for science and technology in terms of We Think Code, completely revolutionizing the education model, democratizing education, and opening up the opportunity for really anyone that was born with a talent to pursue a career and learn how to become the world's best software engineer.
Awesome. And look, I mean, straight up, I can probably assume that maybe just founding BIB was definitely a highlight in your career. But I think if we had to try and relate it back to We Think Code, what was like one of the biggest highlights for you specifically?
Well, there were so many highlights. I think one of the things that come to mind is I remember that very first day. So my co-founder Kemi and I, we didn't really know much about the education space. We just decided We Think Code need to exist in the world, and we decided, okay, we're going to start this peer-to-peer, tuition-free, first of its kind university. And I will never forget the very first day. It was 25 January 2015. All these students, they arrived. Our campus still is today, but in the middle of town in Joburg. It was still a construction site a couple of days before, and all these students arrived. And I just remember thinking, wow, what if everyone just leaves? And but that very first day, when we had all these smart, amazing, excited, wonderful young people, and they just all came together with this passion of they wanted to learn and they wanted to change the world. And so that was really a highlight, just, you know, working on an idea for a year and a dream and seeing it come to life. Like, actually, here are the students, they are here, it's real. That was a very much a highlight for me. And now, sure, it's so humbling. I get messages on LinkedIn or on WhatsApp from my ex-students, and just what they tell me and where they are in the world. I mean, one of our students working at Amazon, another one of our students, she was selected to go to a Facebook conference in Seattle, and just they're working on new pitches and ideas. And I am so humbled and proud of them. And just, you know, even if it was just one of those stories, that makes everything worth it. And yeah, I'm really proud of that.
Okay, amazing. This is really great. So let's take a step back. Let's just try and understand Arlene a little bit more here. And you briefly touched on what your education was, but maybe just if you can just give us a brief understanding of what happened from high school until We Think Code.
You know, I think about this a lot, or I get asked this question a lot. And upon reflection, I don't think I realized it at the time. You know, a lot of people ask, oh, you're a woman, how did you get into coding? And I must say, I never even thought of it like that. And I think perhaps it's because of my dad. My dad my dad flew to Bangladesh in lockdown to work on a project. So he's an engineer. And my dad just always treated me like anything is possible. And he was the one who encouraged me to study computer science already in high school. So from grade 10, I had computer science. And I loved it. I loved mathematics. I loved coding. I'm going to give away my age, but the first language I learned to code in was Turbo Pascal.
Whoa.
But just that, yeah, don't think I'm that old. But, yeah, just the way that you could use technology and rules and how you can and I think mathematics and coding to me is the same in that sense, where you have certain tools to your disposal and you can use them to solve problems. So actually in high school, I wanted to become a doctor. I think maybe it has something to do with my wanting to solve problems.
Right.
But then I realized, wow, I'm just kind of good at this math and coding stuff. And I loved it. And I felt like that wasn't studying. I felt like I didn't have to memorize facts. I just could understand it. And it was easy to me, which is why I decided to pursue that course of study. So I then went to Potchefstroom, from all places. So I'm from Pretoria, by the way. Sometimes people ask me, where's my accent from? I'm an Afrikaner from Pretoria. Studied in Potchefstroom. So I finished my master's degree in business, mathematics, and informatics. And in hindsight now, this course that I studied was actually really good because we also did a lot of industry experience. And if I think back or forward, actually years later, and we think code, we took a very similar approach where it was very industry based. After university, I decided to pursue investment banking career. That sounded very exciting.
Right.
And I worked for 2 years building credit risk rating models, exactly what I studied. And then after that, for 5 years, I worked in mergers and acquisitions. So that was more the exciting deal making side. So if you watch movies like Wolf of Wall Street, that's the kind of stuff we did. But what was really exciting and important and valuable about those 5 years in investment banking in mergers and acquisitions is that I had the privilege to work with the top industry minds in the country. You would advise, as RMB dealmaker, you would advise top CEOs in the country on their strategy. And listening to the problems that they were telling us that they were having was a lot to do with technology. This was around about 2013-ish. And a lot of these CEOs were saying, there's this digital revolution coming and things are changing. We know we need technology in our businesses, but we don't quite know how to do it. And we don't quite know where to find the skills and how to find the people who could code or build tech solutions, but also understand business solutions.
Right.
And I think because I was in this fortunate position where I studied mathematics and coding, and then I worked in the business side as a deal maker, I could just easily build these solutions because building solutions, if you have the background and the skills, are quite easy. But understanding exactly how to almost make the tech solutions talk to the business side, that is quite a unique skill. And that all sort of culminated into saying, okay, this is what we need to do in We Think Code. We need to find really smart people who love technology, but the skill to learn is not just how to code, but it's how to take technology and actually use it to solve real problems.
It's so great that, this is always coming up as a theme, and I've probably said this before, but it's the rationale, the motivation, the outcome, the pro of learning how to code, or at least thinking like a coder, is just to be able to be better at problem solving and to scale problem solving to address problems that we have, and that's good. And I think what you mentioned, it's not only good enough to be able to solve the problem, you need to be good enough to understand what the problem is before you get to the solution, and that's great. This is really great. I want to now go and use the same thinking and say, let's move to Bib. What we always say we're the culmination of, or the sum of, all of our previous experiences, right? So what was the rationale or the idea behind starting that?
Yeah, that's very true. So I have an amazing co-founder. Her name is Juanita. She comes from the more the creative side. We met about 2 years ago, and together with sort of my business and technology background and her creative background with artists and creative directing, we both share a passion for telling stories. And if I take my own journey back, as a little girl, my favorite thing in the world was to read. It's quite embarrassing. I'm going to give away what a nerd I am now, but I remember still going to the library and just I couldn't wait to get new books to read. And I remember if it was holidays, my dad would say, "Okay, I can go into the study and pick books to read," because it was now holidays. Quite embarrassing, but I've from a very early age just developed this love for stories.
Yeah.
And thinking back now, I think as a kid, reading and stories, and especially actually stories that's maybe in the fantasy realm, I think it enables you to dream, and it enables you to imagine things that's not that's not quite here. So if you take the typical cliche of thinking outside of the box, I really think stories and reading enables your mind to do that. So that's sort of where it started. I think then obviously my background with technology, I love saying, okay, how can we leverage technology to scale, to provide access? So through We Think Code, it was very important for us to also democratize access. I think technology can play such an important role in this democratization of access, just enabling a lot more people to have access to very high quality services. And I'm very passionate about being African. I've actually also recently traced back my heritage, 9 generations South African. So I
Yeah.
have no hope of another passport. But we've got such a rich history in this country and on this continent.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us grew up in this sort of last 20 years post-apartheid era, where we were all just sort of, we didn't really want to talk about our past. And, I think now is a good time to go, no, let's share our stories. Just if you think of the 11 different languages that we have in this country, that kind of tells you there's almost at least 11 different types of cultures in this country. And let's learn from each other, and let's tell each other stories and preserve our heritage, preserve these stories. So for us with BIB, it's sharing our African stories with the world, preserving the heritage, so leveraging technology. If you think about it, in a lot of the cultures in Africa, a lot of the stories are spoken word. It's stories that are told, and I'm afraid that we'll lose those stories. So before we lose them, we'd love to capture them but not write them down necessarily. We can also, of course, write them down, but let's go record them. Let's hear them told in the way that they've been told for generations. And let's preserve those stories and share it with the world. And the last thing that's important is also empowering our local artists and talent. So I was quite shocked when I realized how difficult it is in this country to make a living as an artist or a writer or a voice artist. There are very few platforms that you can share your work on. So all of those things coming together, we're just very excited. So as one does in lockdown, we've been obviously working on the idea for quite a while, Juanita and I, and about 2 months ago, we launched. Boom.
Oh, yeah. I actually went through your collection yesterday, and it's very interesting. And I think it's so important because, I mean, for lack of a better word, besides preserving history, a lot of it has been so whitewashed. And allowing that spoken word to come out and using tech to create those repositories, I think it's beautiful. It's also smart. And I think a lot of the time when business owners or entrepreneurs think about let's solve problems, it's always what's the better economic model? How should we live in this capitalistic society? How can we just, it's always wealth and growth and legacy in those senses, but not in the artistic, soul-filling sense.
Yeah, I had a conversation this morning with someone whose book we'd love to publish on BIB. And when I told the author our revenue share model, he's like, "You guys are crazy. You are giving away way too much." But we see things differently. We are giving quite a high revenue share to I put authors, writers, voice artists in the category of artists. We give our artists quite a high revenue share because we see a partnership and we see a long-term sustainable partnership. And that's why we don't always look at, or at least, I don't always think of the short-term gain. Because I think that's short-sighted. So we look to build a sustainable long-term business where we have our artists who feel like they are partners in this business with us. And I do think in the long term, let's not be naive. Of course, your business has to make money. I'm not a snowflake, as they would say, but
Or a socialist.
I'm not at all. This is not a non-profit again. We think of it as a
Yeah.
non-profit. I'm not doing any non-profits again. But if your business doesn't make money, it will just die. So of course you have to focus on that. And trust me, my math and number side, I'm looking at every number all the time. But I think, I just want to challenge people out there as well to just think of longer term sustainable businesses. And I'll take a bet that actually those businesses will be financially more successful in the long term.
True, absolutely. So let's talk about that, right? And I think one of the major costs to any business, besides just, probably would be your staff complement, right? But as we go about it now in this gig economy, if we had to group costs accordingly, tech, people spend a lot of money growing their businesses through tech. And that could be in a multitude of different ways, whether it's developing a product, developing a website, ad spend and campaign management. I mean, it's high budget stuff, right? So let's talk about that in the context of Bub. And if you want to throw in examples of We Think Code, sure. But how would you say, how important is tech to your current model at the moment? And if you can give us an idea of the role of tech within your company and also how your teams work around that.
Perfect. Extremely important. I'm quite proud to say that we have no employees in Bib. All our workers are gig workers. Myself and Juanita even, we're not full-time employed. We're all on contract basis. And then we leverage a lot of tech platforms to make this happen. So one of the systems that we use, I love supporting and using local businesses. So for example, we use a local company called FlexiForce. So we book all our artists, even ourselves. We have an outsourced marketing team. We have an outsourced operations team. We have an outsourced tech team, and all of our artists and our authors, we all book them through FlexiForce. What I love about that is the admin and the tax and the finance is sorted. So
actually,
that is the tech-enabled platform that we use. We communicate on Slack. We have everything on Google Drive. Our app is built on AWS. We have a back end where we can easily upload files and make changes. So from the start, and I think this is the benefit of starting a business for the second time, I am really trying from the start to not be needed or not be a bottleneck in our business. And so there are so many ways that you can leverage tech, but the more you leverage tech, I often also think the more important it is to harness the human relationships as well.
Yeah.
So even though we have no full-time employees, we have a core team that we work with, and they might not be full-time employees, but these are the people that we work with, and we're still focusing on creating a very important culture and making sure that we all connect.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very important, but I quite like the idea of not having any full-time employees.
Yeah. It's so nice that you're able to think like this, and I think maybe it's also just a cause of the background that you come from. So specifically looking like at the banking sector, insurance sector, the medical professions, but not limited to those specifically. How do you see the workplace changing, and how important it is for technology to take over that and tech education to incorporate into those corporate structures?
I think unfortunately this is not just a black or white answer.
It never is.
No, it never is. So I do think the last couple of months it's shown us a couple of things. I think firstly, it is taught us what is possible. You know, we all now know we can work from home, all right? So we all have whatever technology, whether it's Zoom, we probably all have all of it. You probably have Teams and Zoom and Google Hangouts, and you've got everything. So I think also maybe for people who have never used technology platforms like this, I think we're all comfortable now to use it. And we understand the power, and we understand the ability to now scale, and we don't all have to be in the office. But I think on the flip side, we also have learned the power of still spending time together. So I listened to a talk, let me not steal his phrase without naming him. So I listened to Rich Mulholland talking about this, and he was saying the office space will become more like the clubhouse. And I quite like that analogy, and I agree with it. So I think the role that technology will play is it enables you to have teams across the world. It enables your employees to work from home when they need to. But I think we also realize that we still want and crave that human connection. So, but that you could possibly have it more on a, and I think it will be different for every business. It depends also what kind of teams you have. You know, I've seen also with We Think Code, coders love chatting on Slack. They have a whole other persona. It's like some people, in person, I'm like, you're not the same person that you are on Slack, but they love it, and the memes and and they live there. But some other people want to speak in person. So I think the most dangerous thing we can do is to say, you know, one size fits all. I think every business will be different. It depends on your culture. I think the benefits that we have, for example, with Bib, that we started in lockdown is from the start, we could set up everything because we knew we were all remote. And I think you can also then employ people who enjoy working remotely. I hope I'm giving you an answer, but I guess my answer is just nothing in life is that simple and that easy. Personally, I find having discussions about brainstorming ideas, and you know, now we've set aside an hour to just have a conversation. That's great. But what I find is normally now if I have a call with someone, we have an agenda and we get straight to the point and we just bash out what we need to do. You almost lose those moments we have lunch together or just have a coffee and you say, and you talk about ideas. So I fear what we might lose by only having remote is just some of those free-flowing conversations where sometimes the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The magic does happen during those water cooler conversations. What I wanted to ask you is, while we're on the topic of workplace, you mentioned that when you were in investment banking, mergers and acquisitions, and you built that network and you started having those conversations, you identified pretty similar trends as to what problems these businesses were having. And then from that stemmed We Think Code, right? i.e. getting these businesses skill sets. Why was it so fundamentally different, and why couldn't these businesses solve the problem themselves?
So I think the simple answer is it's not their core business to train and skill up people. And I think, you know, I think the trap that we a lot of times fall into is we try to be everything all at once. And the age-old saying, and you know, these cliched sayings exist because they're often true, but focus. And you know, We Think Code's focus was on actually finding talent. This was the most difficult thing for corporates to do, because if you think about the traditional ways of finding talent, you get a CV, okay? Probably the traditional way was a paper CV, okay? At least today we've got a little bit of LinkedIn and maybe you email in your CV, but these processes are not set up for other ways. And you know, it would take a lot of time and effort for them to, and like I say, it's not their core business. Their core business is banking or developing software or whatever. It's not to find talent. So at We Think Code, we actually said our core business was not training people. It was actually finding the talent. So what we did is we said, okay, how do we do this? How do we actually open it up? So to go back to the corporate, so what corporates would normally do is they would look at your qualification. So they would say, okay, great, R&B, I think they didn't even look at your CV if you didn't at least have a master's degree. or sorry, an honors degree, because that was easy to filter, right? It's an easy quantitative way to filter the CVs, the 20,000 that they got a month. So we said, we think, okay, how do we do this? How do we leverage technology to help us to actually filter better for talent? So what we did, and we partnered with a company in France, École 42, but it's games that students play online. So at We Think Code, we said, you don't even need matric, 17 to 35 years old, that is it. And you played games online. Okay, but that was just step one. So that was an easy way to leverage technology. So only 2% of people who start playing the game actually pass. Okay, very nice tech-enabled filter to get to the top 2%. Then step two was to do a boot camp with us. So this step was also very important. Another 3 weeks intense, but again, which corporate can take out 3 weeks to just have a boot camp, assess people? So rather, and I think really this is important, I think people should partner more. I feel like you should never say what to do, but it's so rather partner with someone whose expertise it is. So this is what we did at We Think. So we did the whole boot camp, and then we assessed which students love this peer-to-peer learning environment, who will thrive in this environment, who's really passionate about coding. We did things like a 24-hour challenge. Every day you had to come in, Saturdays and Sundays. You can imagine the challenges that the students had to go through. There's a lack of public transport on weekends. But you know what? The students that really wanted to be there, they found a way. And this was part of what we tested. So yeah, in a nutshell, just this is what the corporates struggled with, is to find that talent. And then we also had the ability to, for a 2-year period, spend all our time and energy on getting these talented young people ready for the workplace and then place them in the corporates.
You know, you mentioned such salient points. I think obviously number one is being able to specialize, or to be able to spend your time on what you're good at and refine that over time. But also I think it also speaks to the lack of credibility. I don't know if I'm going to get shot for this, but it speaks to the lack of credibility that your traditional education has within the corporate or the private world, right? So being able to filter through those 20,000 CVs to find ones with that actual degree, it still doesn't most of the time translates into actual work readiness, right? And how did you guys solve the problem of transforming the way that businesses think, the private sector corporates, into being able to understand that there is value in boot camps or other training methodologies that is not of your traditional education? I think that's a really good point, that point that I think you have a great feedback on.
Yeah, so I think when you think about starting a business, the most important thing is timing. And at the time that we started We Think Code, I think corporates were so desperate for tech talent that they were also willing to take a chance on us. So I will just say that the timing was right. They were desperate to find, they still are, by the way, but to find this tech talent. And even if you did take all the university graduates, there was not enough talent out there. So they were willing to give us a chance, and yeah, to look at this new way. But you know, I think also we partnered with a credible partner in France, École 42. So there was a little bit of background there. And I think we did a lot of research and work in terms of what was important to corporates. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, I see young people excited and wanting to start businesses, but you know, it's a lot of work, and you have to do a lot of research, and you have to really understand your customer. And I think that was the benefit of me working in investment banking for 7 years before I started We Think Code. I really understood what was important to our customers, to our corporates, and to use the language that they would understand. A follow-on that is then when we started We Think Code. So originally we focused heavily on the tech side. This was the partnership with 42, and that was extremely important. But soon we realized a lot more than that was required. So we started a Coding Youth for Success program, which was the softer skills. We started asking our students, what is it that you struggle with? And a lot of them for example, they struggled with time management. So also we were very open to learning both from our students and from our corporates. And the great thing, and again, when I mentioned the partnership model, you know, we didn't just treat our corporates. So a quick recap, the business model of We Think Code is that all students study at tuition free, so at no cost to students. But our customers are actually the corporates. So the likes of an F&B would pay for the studies of a student, and then they get to employ the student at the end. So our customers are the corporates, but we didn't just treat them as, okay, thank you F&B, give us the money and we place the students with you. We really treated all our and still do, our corporates as partners. So we said to them, you know, F&B, for example, you are great at financial literacy. Can you send someone from your team and train our students on financial literacy? IQ Business, can you come do mock interviews with our students and teach them how to be ready for interviews? So again, we leveraged off our corporate partners to also help us with the Coding Youth for Success program, the life skill, the softer side, and really through a 2-year journey, empower our students to be a lot more ready for the workplace than unfortunately any university graduate would be.
Yeah, this is great. I think that definitely solves a real problem, on the ground problem, and it also ekes in that credibility and from the corporates. But also, I think what was smart is you actually managed to get buy-in from them at the early stage. So they were like, "Well, if this fails, it's not an option. We have to try and make it work," you know, which is really great. Taking that, and I think you've given us some beautiful information on how your workplace is structured and how your hiring principles are for BIB. What feedback would you have specifically for hiring managers, for business decision makers out there, in terms of hiring tech talent? And especially given the fact that, I mean, even if you think about We Think Code, adding that to the outcomes of all of the universities, it's still not enough, right? So what are some of the feedbacks or advice that you'd give to some of the business decision makers out there?
Sure, this is a difficult one. I'll try to share my experience because it's difficult. Hiring people is difficult. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, what we said, what the number one most important thing that we looked for in We Think Code student is, do they love it? Do they really want to do this? Do they have this passion? You know, we were laughing always. Some students, they say, oh, I'm starting to talk in loops. Then you're like, okay, their whole brain works that way. They get it. They love it. They would go through the night for fun. And I think I would apply this to every industry all around. I think the world has changed quite a lot. I think we used to see work as, you know, work is not great. It's not fun. It's something you have to do to earn money. The world has changed a lot. You can actually really go into something that you love. And so I think that is the first thing. Is it a good fit? Is it something that the person really wants to do? Secondly, is very similar, but I would say is the culture fit. So again, I could have 10 students and they are all amazing and brilliant, but they might not necessarily fit into your culture and your company.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think again, in the traditional sense, people would say, I want the top student from the university, but have you looked at that person's personality and do they fit in with the actual manager? And sometimes you fit in with the company culture, but that specific manager, the student or the young person or the new employee might not just fit in well with that team. And I think there's been a lot of work recently done and a lot more people are talking about this, but it's as a numbers person myself, the old me used to say, oh, what's all this airy fairy stuff? But, you know, these things are very scientific and they're very important. I think the last thing, if I had to give 3 points, I would say, you know, I would really look for the aptitude. So sometimes, so this is what we did at We Think Code as well. So it didn't really matter what you studied before, what your background was. You could literally take someone with absolutely no experience, but if they're all expertise, or like, actually that's really like at We Think Code, some of our students didn't even have matric, but if they have a certain aptitude, they can learn quickly. And I think the other important thing in today's world, things change very quickly in technology. So you get again, I want to say in the old school way, you like, no, I'm a Java guy, or I'm a Microsoft guy or girl. But you can't really say that today because there's new technologies every day,
Yep.
things change. So I would also look for people with an open mind, um, able to adapt, willing to learn. I think this ability to learn new skills, that's extremely important. And maybe I'll give away my own interview questions, but the first thing, if I hire someone now, the first thing I'll ask them is, tell me about lockdown. And if that person tells me how hard it was and how terrible, I'll say, I feel sorry for you, but sorry, I'm not going to hire you. If that person tells me, you know what, lockdown was crazy, but I used this opportunity to
Yeah.
learn, to do new things, I learned this. That's the kind of people that I would want in my organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we touched on this earlier before we started the session, but there's a huge gender disparity in let's just specifically keep it within the tech coding field. I mean, even from our perspective, just to throw out some numbers there, we have a demographic and an incoming demographic. So people who start registering for our course, 80% male, 20% female. And that translates directly into our actual enrolled students, similarly 80 to 20%. No, that's an average over the last, say again?
Hi.
Absolutely high.
No, that's the sad part.
Oh,
Yeah.
you think 20%, it's high to have even a 20% female? Honestly, man, it was higher before. It was like 85 to 90% male. Over the last year, we've just increased our ability to engage with more females. But my question is, as a role model in the tech space, as a business leader, and as a female, what are some of the thoughts and advice that you have for individuals, both men and women, who are looking at this career option, and also specifically for females? Can you even infer any sort of challenges or obstacles that they may have and speak to that?
Absolutely. So firstly, let me just set the record straight. I would love to see that number at 50-50 or even more females than men, because I think females make amazing coders. So don't get me wrong. But unfortunately, so when we started We Think Code back in 2016, we had 6% women. And we tried, I mean, we two female co-founders, we really worked hard to access women, but we only had 6%. And that number was the same in France for 42, only 6% women. Through working very hard over the last 5 years, and I can share some of our learnings, this year we were very proud that we were at 25% women at We Think Code. So the trend is definitely moving in the right direction. As I said, we'd love to see that number at 50-50. And they also always say there's this magic number of 30% where you don't feel like a minority anymore. So our next milestone is 30%, and then obviously 50%. So that's obviously the goal. But you know, there are many barriers, and there are a lot of lessons we've learned, and then we're still learning. But you know, it's quite simple actually. It is the role models. It is the perception out there. Coding is seen as a very, well, to be honest, coding is a very male-dominated industry,
Yeah.
and so everyone around you are men in the coding industry. So that's the step one. It's the stories you'd also tell around it, right? I have so many stories that I can share, but you know, one of our students once said to us, her brothers all said to her, no, she mustn't become a coder, then she'll never find a husband. And we're like, really? Are people still saying this today?
Yeah.
But you know, so it's the stories we tell each other. It's the stories our parents tell us, our brothers, our sisters, our peers. So that's the first thing that we need to change. It's just the narrative. And you know, as I mentioned, I think I was lucky to have a dad who just said, yeah, of course you must do coding. So, and if I reflect back, I'm grateful for that because my parents encouraged me to do that. I think that's very powerful. So if any parents are listening, I'd love you to encourage your kids. You know, so at We Think Code, we also realized just, you know, I'm also very much of the opinion, men and women, we are different. I'm not trying to be a man. I'm proud of being a woman.
Yeah.
There are many strengths that I have because I'm a woman. So let's also celebrate that. But, a lot of women love being creative and solving problems. And actually, through our research, a lot of women want to solve problems worth solving.
Yeah.
They want to change
Exactly.
the world.
Yeah.
So if you actually show them, well, this is the best way, not a best way, but this is a very powerful way that you can do that, we found that resonated with a lot more women. Then we also had, we started Women Think Code, where we have support networks, mentors, just, that you don't feel like you're the only person going through this. So there's a lot of things, again, like everything, it's not just one simple answer.
Yeah.
But so in a nutshell, changing the narrative, showing that coding is actually, it's creative, it's a sexy industry. And yeah, now that we have the 25% women, we hope that they will become more mentors and role models, and that we will see this trend continuing.
Yeah. I like that part where you said that women are more interested in, I'm not paraphrasing, yeah. I mean, I am paraphrasing, yeah. They're more interested in solving problems worth solving, which I think Bub is a really good example of that, for example. Well, yeah, I think that's about it, Arlene. Thank you so much. I've picked your brain quite a lot, so I really appreciate your time.
Awesome to chat to you as always.